And we are back, officially. Left off yesterday, I was working on this here painting of Victor Cruz. I think my cursor's back today. It's probably still showing up as the arrow. I haven't figured out how to get my actual Photoshop cursor to show up in Cam Studio yet, so this is what we got for the time being. As you can see if you watched the last video, I kind of jumped ahead a bit here between the time I last recorded and now. So let's see if we can't go back in time a bit and see what happened while we were gone here. So what I've been doing for the sake of these recordings is I've been saving kind of previous states as their own layers, just so you can see my progress. So for example, so here's the initial sketch. I think you probably already saw that. And here's some progress that I made. Started working on the facial region over here, getting the pose down. I think this is probably more or less where we left off in the last video, where I was starting to tighten up some of the gray tones. I had mentioned that I was going to try and start the color stage, which I did, which brought us here. So how do I get from there to here? I'm so glad that you asked, really. Blam. That was the next step. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I get to this stage. This is just a very basic color mode overlay that I did just to block in the colors. You can see between that and where I am now, there's a pretty significant difference. This one, which is the first step of coloring, it looks like a grayscale image that has been colorized. What am I talking about? Let's show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the state that we left off in the last video, and I'm going to show you how I go about blocking in them colors, them crazy colors. First of all, let's see if we can show you. So this is my grayscale image that I'm going to be using to colorize. So I'm still horribly congested, and now you know. So first thing I'm going to do is I like to use the overlay mode. I actually have a hotkey. That's why you can't actually see me. I could very easily go do this, but I also have it dedicated to assigned to a hotkey where I press one button and it switches the blending mode from normal to overlay. Some people like to use multiply blending mode for coloring grayscale. Some people like to use here's multiply, where there. Some people like to use color. The reason I use, why don't I show you? Why don't I demonstrate for you the differences between these blending modes? This is almost like an actual tutorial for a change here. So this is color. Let's find a nice flesh tone-ish color. Hang on, let me pull up my reference so I know what I'm looking at. And it's not going to let me. Okay, I've got my reference that you can't see. You know what? I think I have it on a... We'll just use the face. We'll just use the face for now. That's alright. So this is what you get with the color mode. I mean, obviously this color that I chose is not perfect. It's kind of trial and error type of thing. This is color. That's not actually all that bad as a starting point. I mean, obviously the colors are wrong, but the major differences between the color modes. This is color. It's good for kind of converting grayscale to color, which is what we're doing. But what it tends to do is it tends to lose some of the darker values. See, it looks a little bit kind of overall lightened up. And that's fine. I mean, I've used colorize, whatever you want to call it, before, and I've gotten pretty decent results. Let's zoom out. Let's do some of the jersey here. Find a nice bluish thing to use here. And you can see it gets the job done, but it kind of makes everything look kind of highlighted. And personally, I'm not crazy about that. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you eventually need to go back in and color with normal blending modes, you know, opaque colors like you would if you were actually painting anyway. So it's all, you know, it's kind of six of one, half a dozen of the other. So this is color. Let me just briefly go in and illustrate. Multiply. Okay, find a color. What multiply does is it takes your grayscale, and see, it's already, yeesh. It takes whatever color, whatever grayscale you have, and it adds color on top of it. So any highlights, any white that you have that's showing through, that's going to get painted over with the color you chose. So it tends to, especially if you have some shadows in your grayscale, it's going to muddy the whole thing up. Which is okay if, you know, you leave your grayscale kind of simple and you're planning on doing all the highlights from scratch anyway in the color stage. That's okay. Personally, not my fave. I like overlay. And the reason I like overlay is it's kind of the words have escaped me. It's kind of the midpoint, you know, the middleman between color and multiply. What it does is it adds color to your image while keeping your highlights highlighted and your shadows shadowed, but you have to be careful. And the reason I say that is, let's say I'm picking a color to color in with. If I pick a light color up here, light value, it's going to really blow out the highlights, and you're going to start to lose some of those shadows. Or, if I pick a dark valued color, see, it kind of keeps the highlights, but it's really going to muddy up the rest of it. So I think people tend to get a little nervous with overlay just because there's a much greater margin for error. What I try to do is I try and always use something kind of in the middle range in terms of value here. That way I keep my highlights and I keep my shadows without, you know, mudding the thing up or blowing out the highlights. Like I said, if I don't like it from the start, I can always go back and pick another color to do my overlay. Sometimes you'll notice that... What do you notice? What do you notice, Michael? Sometimes I notice that I still, even though I feel like I picked a good valued color for my overlay, I still get too much kind of washed out looking highlights. So what I'll do is I will go to this base grayscale. Whoa! 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 I'll take this base grayscale layer that I used. I'll go into levels. Sorry, when I talk about hotkeys, I'm usually really just speaking to the Windows people. I'm working on a PC. Sorry, Max. Sucks to be you. No, I've used Macs before. I like my PC for whatever reason. The hotkey for levels, what I was saying. On PC is Control L. On Mac, I think it's Command L. Anyway, so what I'll do is, if I notice I have some of these washed out highlights that I don't really want to work with in the color stage, I'll go over here, and if you see this slider over here, now that my sweet cursor is showing up again, move this over, and it darkens all of it basically darkens the whole image that you have, and it gets rid of those obnoxiously washed out highlights. Don't get crazy though. Don't get crazy. The problem is because I did that grayscale all on a background of white. If I move this, the whole thing, you know, you're gonna get gray back there. But whatever. So let's move that. So now they're not quite as washed out. I'm still gonna end up coloring over it anyway. Let's go back to our overlay here. Some general rules for colorizing a face. You know, I had this base skin tone here. I'm going to erase a little bit with my eraser to get some of the... I don't want that skin tone to apply to the eyes, really. I mean, don't erase it all the way, or do. Do whatever you want. As Bob Ross would say, it's your world. And, I don't know, whatever else he says. He had some great hair, that guy. Okay. Lips and such. I take the, go to my color picker. Oh, so I'll click here to get my color window open. See where it is right now. This is the color I have selected already. If I'm doing lips, I like to add a little bit of red, so I won't go all the way down to red, but I'll use this slider, get a little bit more red in there. Little bit. And then I will start adding... Oh, that's my eraser! That is my eraser! Do this. Just a little bit. I mean, like I said, this isn't going to look perfect in this stage. There's still all kinds of work to be done. Sometimes I like to add a little bit of red to the nose region. I mean, maybe you can see if you're looking at the reference, it's... Maybe his doesn't look that way, but whatever. This is my interpretation of Victor Cruz, and if you don't like it, then the hell with you. The neck. What was I going to say? Sometimes the brow ridge has a little bit of reddish to it. For men, you know, post-pubescent men, they have facial hair. So even if they're shaved, you're going to see a little of that follicular goodness. So it's going to lose a little bit of color in this area. If you can see that in the reference over here. So it's a little bit grayer, a little more washed out because there's, you know, hair follicles under there. So I'm erasing a little bit now. Just real gentle. And this is where, when I talked about the tip sensitivity of my tablet, this is where that comes in, because I'm making light strokes, and it gives me more margin for error, where maybe with a different tip sensitivity, or set lower, you know, maybe I just get that regardless of how hard I was pressing. So I can press really light and get really delicate results here. Teeth. I'm gonna erase a little bit here as well. Oh, ears as well. Ears tend to have red in them. Now let me explain a little bit about all this fun stuff, if you'll allow me to do so. Will you? Good enough for me. I'm dying here. I'm sorry. Okay, so lips, tips of the nose, ears especially. Why are they red, you might ask? And I will meet that question with this hopefully true answer, which is that, for example, the lips, the reason they appear red is because the skin is very thin there. There's a lot of capillaries that show through. So there's a natural red coloration in the lips. In the ears, the skin and the cartilage is very thin. So a lot of the time... Also, I think similar thing with the capillaries, that whole bit about capillaries. Capillaries... God, I don't really know how to define them. Something to do with blood. Something to do with blood. So more of those blood capillary things are showing through. In the tip of the nose, skin is thinner. There's a more densely compacted area of capillaries there as well. So whenever you have that, you're going to have reddish. Like I was saying with the ears, there's you know, the skin and the cartilage is thin, so light tends to shine through and blow out those capillaries, so you can really see some of that red shining through. It's kind of like if you ever have a flashlight and you hold your hand or your finger over the flashlight and you can almost see through your finger and it's bright red. That's the same type of thing. It's light refraction, I believe. I don't know, I'll go into that fancy stuff later. Here is an awesome thing I would like to mention. If you want to have more realistic colors or lighting in your paintings or drawings, I'm going to give you some cool stuff to try out. One of my favorite artists, Mr. James Gurney, is an amazingly talented realist painter and has some of the most helpful and insightful books I've ever read on the subject of color and light and realism when it, as it relates to painting. So I'm doing a Google search here for the books just so I can show you what they look like. And having some difficulty. Here we are. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? There it is! There it is! This book is called Color and Light, a guide for the realist painter by James Gurney, creator of Dinotopia. So this is like my Bible for when it comes to applying color and light to any type of realistic painting, drawing, something like that. I would absolutely recommend picking that book up and tell good old James Gurney that I sent you. He doesn't know me yet. He will know me soon. And there's another book by Mr. Gurney that I find very useful as well. And that book is called Imaginative Realism by James Gurney, creator of Dinotopia. How to paint what doesn't exist. And so basically what this teaches you, this book, is it gives you the tools to take what you've learned or what you already know about painting from reference. You know, for example, I have this picture of Victor Cruz, or, where'd it go? This picture of Victor Cruz. So I have photo reference to work from. So the real task is to take those skills that you apply to actual reference, and let's say I wanted to paint a dragon or whatever, something that doesn't exist. It could be a person, but a person that I don't have reference for, a character that I'm creating out of my head. And this book here gives you the tools to make those things from your imagination and have them appear with the same brand of realism and authenticity as a painting you might do based on reference. Super effective, informative book. Check that one out as well. James Gurney, you're welcome for the plugs. Oh, get rid of the other one too. What was I talking about? So, this is where we left off with the overlays. So I talked a little bit about why I choose overlay as opposed to other things. I talked a little bit about some theory about why certain things appear the way that they do. Eventually, once I have, I'll go in and I'll do the jersey too to get to this point. So this was after I finished my overlay colorizing. So I just did base coloring for, it's kind of loose. So I got, the general colors for the jersey, for the face, blah, 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 blippity bloop, bloop, blip, bloop, ah! And now the next step is to, wow, that's a big jump. So what I did between this step, the overlay step and this step is I flatten down my overlay colors and I just start painting opaque. So for example, everything here still looks very colorized. So now that it's flattened, we can start doing some more actual opaque painting. So for example, let's look at the lips. See, there's more red in this spot over here. So I'm going to start just putting in some of them tones. And I'm working just, regular, normal color mode, opaque. Do a lot of color picking. Constantly using that good old color picker. Color picker. To help me to blend. That looks weird. You notice when you do those color modes, you end up with some weird results. So now that you're back in this normal mode stage, you can kind of work some of that stuff out and get to a more realistic looking result. Realistic result. I don't know what I'm doing. Ever, really. I'm a character. So add some of that red. I didn't really do the red in the overlay stage like I did when I was showing you guys. So this is the time to do it. Here's another important thing. I mentioned it in the Assassin's Creed video, which most of you probably didn't watch because it was like 50 minutes long. I mentioned that there's really very seldom any white in a painting. You have shades of what could be considered white that's being affected by the light, but pure white very, very rarely exists in the natural world. Really, the only time is when you have a completely blown out highlight off of, the sun hits the hood of a car, and you can't even look at the reflection because it's so bright it hurts your eyes. That is probably the closest thing, if you took a picture of, pure white, as you're going to find. Everything else is kind of shades. And the same thing applies to black. There's very rarely black. You might say, oh, well, if you're doing a nose, the nostrils are going to be black. Take a sample of that, if you will. Take a sample! That's, it's kind of close. But not really black. There are reds in there. Because what I mentioned about the capillaries and all that fun stuff. So, excuse me. Start putting some of that stuff in. And it's okay to mix with black, just to help, get where you're going, help darken some stuff up. But just don't go nuts on me. Do not go crazy with your blacks or your whites. Don't. Or do. Whatever. You can do whatever you want. Bob Ross says it's your world. And he was a smart man. Highlights. I was mentioning with overlay that these highlights tend to look kind of washed out. And they do! So what I'll do is I'll go back over, see the difference between this highlight color, which is what it is after overlay, and this one that I'm selecting is there's a lot more color saturation. It's a lot more vibrant. So when I paint with that, it pops. It pops! Blam! And it looks more realistic than whatever the washed out result of an overlay or a color mode or whatever else. It looks more realistic. Yeah. Something just fell. What fell? Hello. I'm recording right now. Want to come in here and make a cameo? Nobody can see me. I'm sitting in my computer chair in a towel. My brother just walked in. I'm painting some stuff, and he doesn't know what to do with himself. And now he's standing over my shoulder. So this is the step that we're leaving off. I took the overlay color mode. I did some stuff with that. And now I have flattened it down, and I'm working in the regular, normal color mode stage. So then we'll move forward to this stage, which is after I've done a lot of work between the overlay and painting with normal opaque colors. And you know what, because my brother is making me uncomfortable, so I'm going to stop recording for a bit, and then it's his birthday tomorrow. I'm going to have a little powwow with him, and then I will return to Victor here, and we'll do some more progress. Thanks! Stop. Where's the stop button?